All right, so for a lot of you all, I would say it's about that time for you to start pulling out fragrances like what we're going over today. And this fragrance is basically it's based on the sort of Dior Tobacolor scent profile. This one is from French Avenue, and this is French Avenue's Zenith Tobacco. So this is their take on Tobacolor. Obviously, we've had for quite a while now a really good, cheap, alternative to Tobacolor in Maison Alhambra's Tabac. This fragrance, I've worn this one for a couple of years now, and it definitely, I would say, when I smelled it side by side with Tobacolor, it definitely wasn't exactly the same. You could obviously tell that there was a slight sort of quality difference between Tabac and Dior's Tobacolor. But I mean, for what you were getting with this fragrance with Tabac, and how much you were paying for it, I really felt like this was still a very good interpretation. So fast forward to now, we have Zenith Tobacco from French Avenue. And I mean, as most of you all know, I'm a huge fan of, a lot of French Avenue's interpretations. Typically, when you have a French Avenue interpretation and, there's been like, maybe a Maison Alhambra or Latafa version of it that's come before it, from what I've noticed, most of the time, the French Avenue version seems to be the better interpretation. So we'll be going over, whether or not that's still the case with Zenith Tobacco today. So this is the presentation that you get. You get the name of the fragrance here on the front of the box, Zenith Tobacco, French Avenue down here at the bottom. You have a French Avenue logo on the top, an authenticity sticker over here on the side. And then you've got like this like gold band that kind of runs across the the entire box here, or basically this is like a sleeve that kind of goes over the bottle. You've got nothing on this side, and then you've got like the ingredients and stuff like that. I believe is what that is on the back. This is an eau de parfum, 100 ml, and you've got and this is the ingredients down here at the bottom. So you've got the ingredients down here, as well as like the production date, the barcode. I'm trying to figure out what this is on the back here. I guess it's just telling you to basically keep this, in a cool, dry place in different languages for the most part. This particular bottle, this one was produced in June of this year. All right. So you take that off, and then this is the bottle here. So you got the bottle, French Avenue written right there, and then the actual concentration size of the bottle on the back. And then this is the actual bottle itself. Kind of looks like a cigar, you could say. That's the best way for me to kind of describe what this looks like, or like a cigar like holder or case or whatnot. Got Zenith down here at the bottom, Tobacco around this like gold band, and then the French Avenue logo on the top of the cap, French Avenue sticker down here at the bottom. And then you've got the sprayer, and the sprayer, can't remember how good the sprayer is. So yeah, it's not like a pressurized sprayer, but it still, shoots out a decent amount of juice. And it is, a very strong fragrance as well. All right, now let's go ahead and go over the notes of the three fragrances. So the original, the Zenith Tobacco, as well as Tabac from Maison Alhambra. So the notes for Tobacolor, there's no sort of top, middle, or base note structure for this particular fragrance. So it's just honey, tobacco, tobacco leaf, smoke, plum, amber, oriental notes, white tobacco, peach, and citruses. So that's the note breakdown for Tobacolor. Now for Zenith Tobacco, it is pretty different. So for Zenith Tobacco, you're gonna get top notes of chocolate and mandarin orange. In the mid, you get honey, caramel, and patchouli. And then in the base, you get Toulouse balsam, tonka bean, and moss. Now for Tabac from Maison Alhambra, this one is going to be a little bit closer to the original note breakdown, but it does have top, mid, and base notes. So for the Maison Alhambra Tabac, you're going to get plum, peach, bergamot, and citruses in the top notes. In the mid, you get honey, smoke, and oriental notes. And then in the base, you get tobacco leaf, tobacco, amber, and white tobacco. Now, even though this has like a completely different note breakdown for the most part, this does smell a lot like Dior's Tobacolor. Now, it does, to me, it does have a slightly different feel to it though. When I smelled this side by side with Tobacolor, this fragrance did not come off as sort of like dense and as sweet as what Tobacolor did. Now, I said the same thing with, Tabac. This also did not come across as sweet as what Tobacolor did. I feel like Tobacolor is like really, really heavy on like that really sweet plum that you get in the initial opening, as well as like that really sort of thick, sweet honey. I would say the Tobacolor definitely is a little bit more closer to Tobacolor in that sense, in terms of like the thickness or whatnot. But like I mentioned, in the previous videos where I, mentioned this fragrance, this to me, it just kind of has like a more sort of like earthy greenness to it, the Tabac does, that Dior's Tobacolor doesn't have. It does make this fragrance a little bit more rougher, in my opinion, than what Tobacolor is. This also, I would say, compared to Tobacco Zenith or Zenith Tobacco and Tobacolor, this fragrance definitely has more of like a initial alcohol blast than what, the French Avenue or the Dior does. Now, I can definitely smell, like, especially in the opening of Zenith Tobacco, that it doesn't have that plum note. It almost kind of like when you smell it side by side with Tobacolor, like it does smell like Tobacolor, but it kind of smells like a more sort of like, I would say a little bit slightly drier, more dustier version of Tobacolor. I think that's the best way for me to kind of describe it. Now, definitely as the fragrance starts to dry down, I would say it does become closer and closer to, the way that Tobacolor smells. But in that initial sort of like opening, I would say 30 to 45 minutes, this does smell pretty different from, what Tobacolor does. Just in terms of like texture and feel, as far as the smell goes, you are still getting, that very sort of like tobacco heavy, I would say sweet, slightly, kind of smoky sort of feel from the fragrance. Like it does definitely smell like Tobacolor. And it does, again, smell higher quality than what the Maison Alhambra does. But I just don't get the exact same level of like, the honey that I get from Tobacolor. I don't necessarily get the same dosage of honey in this. Like I said, this does come across a little bit more sort of like airier and not as like thick and dense as what Tobacolor does. And I would even say slightly less sweet as well. So for some people, that actually may be a good thing, because I know some people really feel like Tobacolor is like just overly sweet. And I mean, I can understand that, because I mean, especially for how strong that fragrance is, like you really have to kind of, pick when you wear that fragrance and really kind of pay attention to how many times you spray it, because it is quite strong. This to me is not as strong. I would say, like, if Tobacolor is the baseline at 100, the strength on this would probably be like 85, I would say, for the most part, like a 85. And then, I would say the Tabac from Mason Alhambra is slightly stronger because it's a little bit more denser than what the Zenith Tobacco is. Now, with that being said, this is by no means a weak fragrance at all. The couple of times that I've worn this fragrance, I've only sprayed this like 2 times, and it's been like one spray on each arm to kind of get a feel for this one. The first time was definitely like worse than the second. The first time that I sprayed this, I sprayed it on both arms and just started working, and it was a little too much. I think maybe it probably had something to do with the fact that it's still warmer out here in Vegas, and like my body overall is probably just, it's a little bit warmer because of the heat. That's the only thing I guess that I can really think of. But this was like, it was headache inducingly strong. Like, that's how strong it was. Like, it started to give me a headache. I kind of wanted to wash it off because of how strong it was. Like, it was just too much. And like I said, I only sprayed this on 2 times, and it was just on both of my arms. So this will absolutely perform very, very well, I would say. Even when it gets a little bit cooler outside. Again, it just has a slightly different texture than what Tobacolor has. It still has the smokiness. It still has the tobacco. The honey is definitely dialed down a little bit more. And like I said, the chocolate, that like dark chocolate note that you get in the top note of this particular fragrance, to me, it makes the fragrance a little bit more like dustier, than what Tobacolor is in the initial opening. But again, man, this is definitely still higher quality in my opinion than what Tabac is, for sure. Now, if we're talking again about the performance on this is very good. So this never stopped projecting on me. And I mean, that's another thing that I also experienced with this, and same thing with Tobacolor. Just, the nature of the scent profile, it is going to be a very sort of strong scent. And I mean, I literally went through like a whole 8-hour shift, because I sprayed this on like minutes before I like signed on for work. And by the time I got off work, this was still like pushing to the point where it was like headache inducing, for sure. Like, and it's weird because this scent profile is not a profile that I go nose blind to. So it's like you're smelling the full strength of this fragrance the entire time that you're wearing it. So, I think probably the next time that I wear this fragrance, I'm going to kind of focus on just spraying it like behind like my ears, or like on the back of my neck or something like that. You don't want to have this fragrance like right in front of your face, because it will definitely give you a headache, for sure. As far as the longevity on this, I mean, like I said, I got through an entire 8-hour shift and it was still projecting. So this is going to be super beast mode. I could easily see this one, pretty much lasting until you wash it off. And the projection, again, is extremely strong. Just like the original, just like this, except again, the texture on this is just slightly more dustier and airier, but it's still extremely strong. All right. As for the closeness rating on this particular fragrance, Zenith Tobacco, this to me, I would say is probably like around 90%, like 85 to 90% close to Dior's Tobacolor. So it is still very close. It's just, in my opinion, it comes across as being like a slight twist on the scent profile is what I'll say. But again, it does still smell higher quality overall than what Tabac does. So, you know, I would definitely still recommend this fragrance for sure. You know, if you're looking for a really nice alternative to Dior's Tobacolor. You know, I know a lot of those Dior private line fragrances, they're just really, really expensive. And this does give you a very good alternative to that scent profile overall. Like I said, you just really, really want to be careful with how many times you spray this because it is extremely strong. You know, even with it being, you know, again, less dense than what Tobacolor is, this still, make no mistake, is extremely strong. All right. Now, as for my overall rating on this fragrance, this I would easily say is like an 8 out of 10 for sure. You know, it definitely is the type of fragrance that I plan to wear when it gets like really, really cold out here in Vegas. You know, if you live somewhere where you have long winters, you'll get a lot more usage out of a fragrance like this. And it definitely, to me, is for like the more kind of sophisticated, more well-dressed, you know, more mature type of person. So this isn't necessarily like the type of fragrance that you would wear like casually, I wouldn't say. This is definitely going to be for that more kind of like high-end, sophisticated, you know, man or woman, because I do think that this is a very unisex type of scent for sure. You know, it is very sweet, yes, but I do still think that this is a very unisex style, you know, kind of sweet tobacco style type of fragrance. All right, so that is my take on Zenith Tobacco from French Avenue. Definitely let me know what you all think about this fragrance in the comments. Let me know if you all have picked this one up, and if so, do you like this one better than Tabac from Maison Alhambra? Do you actually like this one better than Dior's Tobacolor? Let me know in the comments below. Also, I'll have links in the description to where you can pick this up. And if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see you on the next video.